The Elder Scrolls is to video games what The Lord of the Rings is to cinema and literature, and what Dungeons and Dragons is to tabletop gaming. That's to say it's the most popular high fantasy property within its medium, at least within the West. Simply put, there isn't a gamer out there that doesn't know what The Elder Scrolls is. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim alone has sold over 60 million copies as of 2023. It's become a meme how many times Bethesda have re-released Skyrim over the years. This popularity exists with good reason. Since 1996, with the release of The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, The Elder Scrolls has been developing one of the most interesting fantasy worlds, with some of the most detailed world building seen in it across all mediums within the entire genre of fantasy. This world building and lore has continued since the release of Daggerfall in 1996, only getting deeper with the releases of The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, and The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim in 2002, 2006 and 2011 respectively. The Elder Scrolls adds this detail to its world in ways that are very common for video games, such as talking to NPCs, completing quests and exploring the world around you, but it also does it in more unique ways, such as the hundreds of readable books that can be found within its world. I want to narrow our focus down to one particular piece of this massive world today, namely Umbra, the living sword that appears within 3 of the 5 mainline games, and has a central role within the only 2 Elder Scrolls novels. I personally think that this sword has some of the most interesting writing within the entire series associated with it. This is primarily because of the Greg Keyes novels, The Infernal City and its sequel Lord of Souls, but these 2 incredible novels wouldn't be half as good as they are without the foundation set up within The Elder Scrolls 3 and 4. We will be looking at the lore of Umbra and how it connects with the Greg Keyes novels today. Then we'll be looking at how Bethesda ruined all of this amazing lore and writing with a paid mod from the Creation Club. We will be digging into why this creation ruined the lore of Umbra and how this connects to a much larger problem with Bethesda. So then, without any further ado, let us ado further. The Elder Scrolls Online, or ESO for short, is an MMORPG, or massively multiplayer online role-playing game, set within the world of Tamriel of the Elder Scrolls. This game takes place earlier within the timeline than any other game in the series. To be precise, it takes place during the Second Era. To understand what this really means, we need to look at how time works within the Elder Scrolls. First of all, the planet that games take place on is called Nirn, with the continent that we explore being called Tamriel. Now, history within Tamriel has been split up into 6 different eras. We have the period of time where Nirn was created by the gods, which is known as the Dawn Era. There is no way to know how long this era lasted for, as it existed outside of time and was therefore timeless. Then we have the Mirific Era, which is essentially prehistory and when life was first placed into the world by the gods. This era lasted for 2,500 years. Then we have the beginning of recorded history with the First Era, which lasted for 2,920 years. As you would expect, this was followed up by the Second Era, which lasted for 896 years. The Third Era lasted for 433 years. Then we have the Fourth and most current era as of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which has so far lasted for 201 years. Although Umbra doesn't appear in the Elder Scrolls Online itself physically, we do know that it existed during the events of ESO because it's mentioned in the book Tamrielic Artifacts Part 3. You can find this book within the Elachorrid Desert within Hammerfell. This book is a catalogue of powerful artifacts. The section on Umbra reads, "The Umbra sword was enchanted by the ancient witch Naimra Ware, and its sole purpose was the entrapment of souls. When used in conjunction with a soul gem, the sword allows the wielder the opportunity to imprison an enemy's soul in the gem. Naimra was executed for her evil creation, but not before she was able to hide the sword. The Umbra sword is very choosy when it comes to owners, and therefore remains hidden until a worthy one is found." Although Umbra hasn't appeared in the Elder Scrolls Online yet, it's possible that it may make an appearance within a future expansion to the game. But as far as we know, Umbra wasn't seen in Tamriel for another 1,200 years, which brings us to the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Umbra makes its first physical appearance in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. During the year 427 of the Third Era, Umbra was found by the Nair Ravine just outside of the town of Saran, on the island of Vardenfell within the province of Morrowind. The sword was found within the possession of an orc who refused to give his name when asked. When you introduce yourself to this orc, he greets you with,
"Have you come seeking me? My name is unimportant and my accomplishments are few."
When asked about his name, he replies,
What is the use of knowing my name? If it will make you more comfortable, you may call me Umbra. It is the name of my blade, though it may as well be mine.
When asked about his accomplishments, the orc will answer,
What are any of my accomplishments in the whole of this world? I have travelled from one end of the land to the other. I have killed creatures that can stop a man's heart with but a look. I have the blood of man and mer uncountable on my hands. I have seen the atrocities of war and the hideous excess of peace. There is nothing left for me in this world.
If you ask him about the atrocities of war, he will explain,
I have seen the wholesale slaughter of men, women, entire races of people. Villages have burned before my eyes. My hand has held the torch and my hand has thrown water on them flames. I've been ankle deep in blood, swinging Umbra in a wide arc, all for the glory of battle. And yet here I still stand.
If you go on to ask him why he feels that he has nothing left, he answers with,
I have no more to do in this life. I have saved whole towns from packs of Daedra, and I have slaughtered men for the glory of countless nobles. All that is left for me is my own death, and the gods have cheated me of that. All I ask is to die like a warrior, but how can that be?
When asked about dying like a warrior, the orc will explain,
I don't believe it is too much to ask to die as a warrior should, in battle. It is my curse, though. I have found no one that can best me in combat. Are you the one that can? Can you come and lift me from these shackles of life? Come then, be the new wielder of Umbra.
If you then promise to give him the death that he deserves, he will exclaim,
Excellent! Perhaps now I will be granted a warrior's death, and if I am not, know that you will be.
The orc will then attack you, and believe you me, he hits hard, so prepare yourself for one tough fight. He's level 20 and clad in all ebony gear, and he uses the Umbra sword, which itself hits hard. If you do manage to best this worthy opponent, then your victory prize will be Umbra, which you can collect from his body. Umbra has been known to shift, changing its shape and size over the centuries, but when it's found by the Neravine, it appears as a large two-handed greatsword. After besting the orc, the Neravine brings the evil blade to Morrowind's mainland, namely the city of Mournhold. It's here that the blade becomes an exhibit within the local museum. Interestingly, it's also possible to find a copy of the book Tamrielic Artifacts, which we last saw in the Elder Scrolls Online. After being left in the care of Torsa Aram and her Mournhold Museum, the blade would remain there until it resurfaced 6 years later during the Oblivion crisis in Cyrodiil. During the year 433 of the Third Era, the sword resurfaced, this time in Cyrodiil. The hero of Kvatch finds himself tasked by Clavicus Vile, the Daedric prince of trickery and bargains, to retrieve his lost sword.
A mortal! Wonderful. Always a pleasure. Perhaps you'll do service for me, mortal, and I'll reward you. A fair bargain, don't you think? You will retrieve for me a sword, a very special sword. It contains the soul of Umbra, a hero I have had dealings with in the past. Bring the sword to me, and I'll reward you with my mask. You'll not find a better bargain, mortal. Begin your search in Pel's Gate.
We learn from the town of Pel's Gate that the sword can be found within the care of a Bosma hiding out within the Ayleid ruins of Vindicil. This Bosma used to be a good and kind-hearted woman called Lenwyn, until she came into possession of the sword. She was then twisted into a violent killer, feeding the sword's unholy bloodlust.
Umbra? That's a name I haven't heard in a while. And it's not one you should be using around Pel's Gate either. Before I go on, let's clear something up. Are you here asking about the sword or the person? Which is it? It's a powerful sword, no doubt about that. Jet black. Got a wicked edge on it, and they say it can steal a man's soul. I know of at least one soul it stole. Lenwyn. She's the one who found the blasted thing. I suppose you want to hear about the person now. Who is Umbra? I can tell you who Umbra used to be. Lenwyn. She's my apprentice, or at least she was, until she found that sword. Never did say where it came from. She just showed up with it one day, said it was called Umbra. But she was different. She'd always been fair with a sword, but she began looking for fights, became bloodthirsty, and then started calling herself Umbra after the sword. Finally signed on with some mercenaries, but I hear that ended too. We haven't seen her in years.
You risk much by speaking to me. You should leave this place. Now. Umbra is my blade. It is who I am. Who I was meant to be. For years I have fed my blade the souls of man and mer. Warriors and priests, kings and paupers, men, women, and children, all have bled for me. I have seen them all fall, and still Umbra hungers for more. Do not speak to me of that place. It was another lifetime. It was before I became what I am now. Perhaps they sent you to kill me. Are they worried I might come in the night and burn their village down around them? No matter. I am what I've become, and I know my fate. But what of you? What is it you seek? My death? My blade? I offer you a choice. More than I have offered most. Stay here and die, or leave now and live your life. Speak to me again when your mind is set.
Similar to Umbra the Orc, Lenwyn is one tough fight. You can't even begin this quest until you're level 20, and that's fair with how tough of a fight it really is. After the hero of Kvatch manages to defeat the Bosmer, they can retrieve the sword from her body. Umbra has shifted since Morrowind. Whereas it was previously a two-handed greatsword, now its form has shifted into a one-handed longsword. It still retains its black appearance and the ability to trap the souls of those it kills. After you have taken the sword from the body of the Bosmer, you are presented with a choice: either return the sword to Klaviker's vial in return for his mask, or keep the sword for yourself.
I'm telling you, don't bring that sword back to Klaviker's. It'll ruin him, I'm sure. I mean, not completely. He's still a Daedra principle. Look, keep the sword if you want. That's your decision. But don't give it back to Klaviker's. He doesn't know what's good for him sometimes.
The canon choice is to return the sword to Vial, but it is worth mentioning that Vial's loyal hound Barbarous urges you to keep it, claiming that returning the sword to his master would be very bad indeed. This is the first time that we've gotten a connection between the Umbra sword and Klaviker's vial. It seems like we're beginning to learn more about this evil weapon. We're now able to understand that the witch Naimra Ware created Umbra as part of some twisted bargain with Klaviker's vial. Naimra was put to death after creating the blade, but not before the weapon was lost. I think it's safe to assume that Vial took the weapon for himself and simply left Naimra to her fate. The weapon, seeking to be free of its Daedric master, managed to escape during the Third Era, where it found itself in the possession of an unnamed orc. It travelled with the orc for an unknown amount of time, committing plenty of evil deeds, killing men and mer with abandon. Then during the year 427 of the Third Era, the Neravine defeats the orc and takes possession of the blade. They then sell the blade to Torasa Aram, who keeps the blade within her Mournhold museum. Sometime later, a Bosmer called Lenwyn steals the blade from the museum. The sword twists Lenwyn's mind, turning her from a normal, well-balanced person to a broken psychopath only wishing to sate the bloodlust of Umbra. Eventually, she loses herself so much that she takes the name Umbra as her own, in the very same way that the orc before her had. Then in the final year of the Third Era during the Oblivion crisis, the hero of Kvatch is tasked by Klaviker's vial to retrieve his lost sword. The hero of Kvatch, Best Lenwyn, retrieves Umbra, and against the advice of Barbarous, returns the sword to Klaviker's vial's possession. Umbra would then go on to return to Tamriel during the events of the Greg Keyes novels. 48 years into the Fourth Era, a floating island appears off the coast of Lilmuth in Blackmarsh. This island is called Umbriel and is ruled over by a Dunmer using the same name. Anyone caught in the wake of this massive floating landmass has their souls ripped from their bodies and siphoned into the island, where they are used to both power and keep it afloat. Immediately it's possible to see the connections between the sword Umbra and this floating island of Umbriel, as both feed on souls. Over the course of the novel, we learn more about this strange island and its connection to Umbra. To fully understand Umbriel, we first of all need to understand what happened within Vvardenfell after the events of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Vivec City rests along the southern coast of Vvardenfell and is named after the demigod Vivec that lives within the Holy City. Any fans of Morrowind or the Morrowind expansion to the Elder Scrolls Online will be aware aware of the giant meteor that remained suspended above Vivec City. This meteor, known as Bardu, or the Ministry of Truth, was captured and suspended in place by Vivec. When Vivec used his divine powers to stop Bardu, he essentially paused it in time. That's to say that the meteor retains its momentum. Now this wasn't an issue as long as Vivec was there to hold it in place. Then, during the events of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, the Nerevarine destroys the heart of Lorcan, which was the source of Vivec's divine powers. While Vivec managed to retain some of his powers after the destruction of the heart, the demigod would go on to vanish during the events of the Oblivion crisis 6 years later. Now no one knows where, why, or even how Vivec vanished, only that he did. This meant that the people of Vardinfell needed to find a way to keep Bardu suspended above Vivec City. Two Dunmer known as Vohon and Sol made a deal with Clavicus Vile, and were given the knowledge of the Ingenium. This device fed on souls and used that energy to keep Bardu in place. He told you about the Ministry? How we devised a method to keep it airborne? Yes, by stealing souls. Well, we couldn't find any other way to do it, Vohon allowed. Given time, perhaps we could have. At first we had to slaughter slaves and prisoners outright, as many as 10 a day. But then I found a way to use the souls of the living. Although only certain people had souls, well, for simplicity's sake, let us say large enough. We only needed 12 at a time then. A vast improvement. Illhaven was chosen because she had the right sort of soul. At first, the Dunmer fed slaves and prisoners to the device, but they soon ran out of those, and they started to feed civilians to the Ingenium instead. During the 5th year of the 4th era, Vohon fed Sol's wife Illhaven to the Ingenium. Sol attempted to remove her, which caused the device to explode. Both Vohon and Sol were pulled through the resulting portal, ending up in Clavicus Vile's realm of Oblivion, just as Bardu hit Vivec City. While all of this had been happening, within the Fields of Regret, Clavicus Vile's realm of Oblivion, Umbra had been fighting to free itself from its master once again. It managed to cut a piece of Vile off and absorbed this power stolen from the Daedric Prince. Thanks to this power, Umbra was able to form itself a body, one of pure darkness. With this body, it fled from Vile until it found the portal caused by Vohon and Sol. Umbra threw the sword through the portal as it closed. As Bardu hit Vivec City, it caused a chain reaction with Red Mountain, the volcano at the centre of Vardinfell, which erupted. The resulting destruction destroyed all of Vardinfell, most of Morrowind's mainland, and parts of the island of Solstheim. This event would become known as the Red Year. Meanwhile, in order to stop Umbra escaping, Clavicus Vile hardens the borders around his realm, trapping both Vohon and Umbra. Vohon joins with Umbra and becomes known as Umbriel. Now it's never made clear if this union was mutual or forced, but since Umbriel doesn't seem to object to their creation, one can assume that it was mutual. Umbriel rebuilds the Ingenium and uses it to tear a piece of the Fields of Regret off, wrapping Clavicus Vile's realm around the landmass like a bubble. This means that while the landmass of Umbriel is physically separate from the Fields of Regret, it's still technically within the borders of Vile's realm. Vile had made it impossible for Umbra to leave his realm, and after your escape, Sol, he tightened his walls further so that I couldn't leave either, even if I had had the means. The only way to escape was to circumvent his restriction, to remain in his realm, at least in a way. So I built my Ingenium and I powered it with Umbra and the energy that he had stolen from Vile. I turned our city, wrapped those circumscribed walls around it, twisted it like a sausage maker twists a casing to form a link, the way a child might an inflated pig's bladder to form a double ball, twisted it until it broke loose like a bubble. Over the next 43 years, Umbriel searches Oblivion for Nirn, so that it can find Umbra and free itself from Vile's grip once and for all. Meanwhile, Sol travels across the many Daedric Prince's realms looking for a way back to Nirn, all so that he can find and kill Vohon, which brings us to the year 48 of the 4th era, when Umbriel appears off the coast of Blackmarsh. Umbriel makes its way north to the remains of Vivec City in order to search for the Umbra sword. Once Vohon learns that the sword is no longer within Vivec City, he instead heads towards the Imperial City in Cyrodiil, while Sol heads to the island of Solstheim to recover the sword. During the 43 years between the Red Year and the appearance of Umbriel, Lord Satil of Solstheim had made a bargain with Clavicus Vile. This deal saw the Lord send in his son, Elhol Satil, to Vivec City in order to recover Umbra. When Elhol found the sword, it drove him mad, as we have seen with the Orc in Morrowind and the Bosmer in Oblivion. Lord Satil locked his son away in a dungeon cell, unable to bring himself to kill his own son. Sol and his companion Atrabus find Elhol and confront him for the sword. Sol had dropped or maybe thrown his lantern, It shattered and was now a brightly burning pool of oil. In the ruddy light, Elhol Satil was hideously revealed. He had skin but no flesh, and the skin fit him so tightly his bones were all painfully revealed. As he continued his terrible shrieking, Atribus could see the apple of his throat bobbing, reminding him of a lizard or a frog. There was something strangely childlike in his gestures. The way his almost white eyes darted hesitantly between Sol and Atribus. Atribus almost didn't notice the sword. It was so much a part of Elhel, just an extension of his arm with its tip resting on the floor. He glanced at Sol long enough to see the dark stains spreading on his arm. "I told you," Sol began, but Elhel was suddenly bouncing forward towards Atribus with unbelievable speed. There was no attempt at technique. Umbra chopped down at him like a cleaver. He met the blade with Flashing's flat edge. The blow drove him to his knees and sent arrows of pain into his shoulder. Gasping, he flung himself forward in an attempt to tackle the apparition, but although Elhel looked as if he only weighed 60 pounds, he felt as if he was made of cast iron. Elhel boxed his ears and Atribus stumbled back, his head ringing exactly like a bell. Elhel came after him. Lightning cracked about him and he didn't miss a stride. Elhel lifted the black sword to strike again, and Atribus drove Flashing into his solar plexus. Or he tried to. The point didn't break the withered black skin. Still, the impact sent Elhel back a step so that his swing smacked into the cave floor rather than Atribus' skull. Atribus cut hard at his foe's head. It felt like hitting a statue. Elhel shook it off as Atribus backed away. Elhel stopped screaming and then spoke. "Take it from him," Elhel said, his voice curiously high-pitched but imperiously demanding. "What?" Atribus said, trying to gain more ground. "Take the sword from him, you idiot!" He seemed to have a hard time talking. His gaze was full of fury. Then his eyes changed, and so did his tone. "Please," he whispered. Then he flung himself at Atribus again. Atribus jumped back and tripped, throwing Flashing's point up in a feeble attempt to ward off the thing that had been Elhel Satil. But Elhel stopped in mid-stride, his mouth open as if to scream again, but there was no sound issued. Instead, a smoking green fluid vomited out. He clasped his free hand to his head as the same viscous stuff jetted from his eyes and ears. Holes began to burst in his abdomen, and he crumpled, breaking into pieces. Where the vitriol touched the stone, it began to dissolve. "Get back," Sol said. "Don't touch it." "Oh, I wasn't considering that, believe it or not," Atribus said, trying to keep his breakfast down. "That was..." But he didn't have a word strong enough for whatever magic Sol had used. "It worked," Sol replied. "I was starting to think nothing would." "Congratulations. How's your arm?" Sol glanced at the wound as if he had forgotten it. "Not bad," he said. "Nothing that won't heal." Atribus looked back at the remains, which now consisted of a foaming green puddle, and the sword, which seemed untouched. "What now?" he asked. "We can't pick it up without becoming like him, as far as I understand it." "Probably not," Sol said. "Look around. Find something to wrap it in. It's going to be a while before the acid is gone anyway." Only then did Atribus notice the bodies. Most were merely bones, but a few were still fresh enough to smell. The light from his lantern and the dying flame that had been Sol's were enough to reveal half a dozen. He didn't want to know how many lay outside of that illumination. As it turned out, they didn't have to hunt hard or long. In a mouldering pile of clothes and bedding, they found a sheath. After about 20 minutes, when the floor finally stopped smoking, Sol pushed the scabbard onto Umbra. He stared at the blade for a few minutes, then picked it up by the sheath. His eyes widened and he muttered something under his breath that might have been some sort of incantation. "Even in its sheath," he said. "Stay away from this, Atribus." He tore one of the blankets and cut it into strips, first winding them around Umbra's grip, careful not to touch it. Then around the scabbard as well, until there were several layers of wool covering the whole weapon. Sol eventually makes it onto the island of Umbriel and confronts the being known as Umbriel, ultimately sacrificing himself to defeat Vohon, but also to save Atribus. Umbriel is killed, with Umbra being absorbed back into Clavicus' vial. Atribus screamed in despair as he dove for the sword. He picked it up, and as he was drawn into it again, into anguish and horror that would never end, he aimed himself down at the Ingenium. Vohon came after him quick as lightning, almost quick enough. Then Umbra struck into the heart of Umbriel, and everything was changed. When Atribus plunged Umbra into the Ingenium, Sol heard the universe scream. The tortured cry rang from every surface, from the air itself, from Vohon's gasping mouth. A tongue of white black licked out from the Ingenium and struck his old enemy, and his body twisted, deformed, grew blacker, hunched, feral. "Umbra," Sol said. Umbriel, the creature snarled, slumping towards him. The flame had thinned, but remained like a tether. Why? This has nothing to do with you. It was about Vohan. I can cleanse myself of him. I can make you powerful, more powerful than we were. We can still escape Vile. No, Sol replied. I'm done with this. You are not! The thing snapped, leaping forward. Sol felt fingers as hard as steel close on his windpipe. He struck into Umbriel's throat, but the creature only squeezed harder. But then Umbriel vented one last howl and the grip softened. The flames snaked back away from his body and into the Ingenium as the body went limp. Sol pushed it off him, coughing, sucking air into his lungs. Below, Atribus was starting to glow and was beginning to distort. Sol glanced at his enemy, which looked like Vohan again. His chest was still rising and falling. Sol went for his knife, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he jumped down to join Atribus. It's working, Atribus said, but it wasn't his voice, and the eyes staring out at Sol were the strange eyes of Clavicus Vile. Let him go, Sol snapped. You're destroying him. He made the sacrifice, Vile said. You, I think, knew what the price would be. It wasn't supposed to be him. Well, things don't always work out as we plan, the Daedrus said. In coming here, I lifted the restraints around this place. A deal is a deal and you're free to go. Saul balled his fist and swung, but Atribus, or rather the thing wearing him, was fast. It whipped Umbra out of the Ingenium and stabbed him just under the sternum. It knocked all the wind out of him, and his legs and arms went loose, so he was just hanging off the blade. Saul turned into himself then, searching for the fury that had driven him for 40 years, remembering Ilhaven, the ruins of Morrowind, years of torture and hardship. He felt his heart stop, and he opened his eyes, staring at his killer, at Atribus. It was then that he found what he needed, and it wasn't anger or hatred. As if in a dream, he reached out and grabbed the hilt of Umbra and pulled himself up the blade, and with everything left in him, he struck Atribus in the jaw. Atribus fell back, releasing the weapon. Sol saw his gaze return to puzzled normality. It's okay, he told the boy. Then he took one step, fell against the glowing orb, and let go of everything. Light filled him, and coarse mocking laughter, but then he was gone. After the destruction of Umbra and the Ingenium, the island is transported to a new unknown realm of Oblivion, the same mysterious realm that was once home to the hissed trees of Blackmarsh. While the evil sword that once called itself Umbra is killed, completely destroyed, and then reabsorbed into Clavicus Vile, ending the story of Umbra once and for all. I think it would be difficult to get a more definitive ending than this. I love this story. It spans 2 amazing games and 2 wonderful novels. It sees Nirn almost destroyed by a weapon that players of the games would most likely have found within the games themselves, twice actually, giving them a real connection to the events of these Greg Keyes novels. As they stand, the Greg Keyes novels are 2 underrated gems within the fantasy genre. I've read them both twice and will almost certainly read them again. If you're after an intense, well-paced fantasy novel with plenty of strange and alien ideas, all with lots of mystery and high-stakes action, then these are the perfect reads for you. This should have been the end of Umbra's story, but of course Bethesda just can't let a good story end, so if Umbra would reappear during the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. When the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim first launched in 2011, Umbra was nowhere to be found. There was a small tree in the Whiterun Hold known as the Sleeping Tree that is believed to have originated from a seed that fell from the floating island of Umbriel, but this cannot be confirmed.
How the tree came to grow there is a bit of a mystery. Some say that when Vardenfell erupted, a piece was blown to the middle of Skyrim and from the crater grew the tree. I've also heard that it was a spore that fell from an island floating in the sky, but that just sounds like nonsense. All I know is that the sap makes you feel as healthy as a cave troll, but slow as a drunk horker, and that it fetches good coin.
Outside of the Sleeping Tree, there is no mention of Umbra or Umbriel within Skyrim, which makes sense seeing as the game is set in the year 201 of the 4th era, over 150 years after the events of the Greg Keyes novels. Then in 2017, Bethesda launched the Creation Club, This is a service that offers paid mods by Bethesda that add content to their games after support with DLC has ended. We've seen creations added to Fallout 4, Skyrim and Starfield so far. One of the creations added to Skyrim was the reintroduction of Umbra. The last Dragonborn finds Umbra being held by an Imperial within an ancient amphitheatre known as Champion's Rest. We can learn by reading the Imperial's journals that they were once known as Crestus and were a treasure hunter. As he was waiting to die, he dreamt of a sword known as Umbra calling out to him, and when he wakes he finds the sword is real and he can feel it hungering for souls. I'll read his journal now. It's the 12th of sun's dusk. I've never been much for writing in journals, but it couldn't hurt to start. How else will my exploits be remembered? I've yet to reach personal bard levels of fortune. By way of an introduction, my name is Crestus. I've travelled north from Cyrodiil to seek my fortune in Skyrim, by delving her many depths and wooing her many women. While I haven't had much luck with the latter, I have heard tales of an ancient arena whose whereabouts have up until now remained a mystery. While the original name of this amphitheatre is lost to time, Champion's Rest is what it's known as today. I can see it now. Halls upon halls, all glittering with gold and jewels. Maps in the Imperial Library place Champion's Rest east of the village of Shore's Stone. I will set out for the eastern mountains at dawn. Today's the 13th of sun's dusk. Going to be a short entry today. It's been a day's hike and I have little to show for it. Why does Skyrim have so much snow? Maybe the treasure hunter's life isn't all it's cut out to be. But if it were easy, everyone would do it, right? I'll press further into the mountain pass tomorrow. I believe it's the 16th of sun's dusk. By some small miracle, I'm alive. Deep in the mountains, the snow gave way underfoot. Next thing I know, I'm plummeting into a cavern from a devilish height. What a foolish place Skyrim is. Both my legs are surely broken and my agony is only second to my despair. I realise I'm going to die in here. It's been 3 days since the fall and my food ran out yesterday. Water will be the next to go, unless of course it happens to rain. I've been slipping in and out of dreams. I dreamt that I was floating in a sea of black, and before me floated a sword unlike anything I've ever seen. A real treasure, just like in the stories. It called to me, it knew my name. I reached my hand out and then... I'm awake now, it turns out, and the sword is real. I have it right here next to where I write this entry. My legs are beginning to feel better. None of this can be right. When I sleep, I hear the sword. It whispers to me, not with words, but with intent. It has a hunger, I can feel it. Of course! It seems silly that a weapon wouldn't hunger for lives when you think about it. Is that not their purpose? To free the soul from the living? Maybe none of this is real. I can walk again. I've set up a small camp here. Oh, I think it's the sword. It's helping me. It thirsts for souls and it needs me to find them. All I could think about at first was getting out of this place, but now, amongst the restless souls of so many fallen warriors, yes, I think I'll stay. It whispered its name. It is We Are Umbra. After we defeat this Imperial, we're able to take Umbra for ourselves. Umbra has reverted to the form we first found it in during Morrowind, once again being a two-handed greatsword. It still retains its dark black colour, and the ability to feed on souls. Simply put, the quest to find Umbra in Skyrim is awful. It's unmarked, you have to just Google where to find it or randomly stumble across Champion's Rest. There's no voice acting at all, and it becomes as clear as day that this is a cheap attempt at milking Elder Scrolls fans by Bethesda, seeing as Clavicus Vile himself makes no mention of the blade, even if you complete his quest using Umbra. Bethesda wanted to make a little bit of extra cash from an old game, so they placed Umbra back into Tamriel with no care or attention to the lore and history of this incredible world. An amazing story has been undone, all thanks to this cheap, awful attempt at cynically adding more content into the game. I hate what this has done to the lore of one of my favourite stories within one of my favourite universes, but what worries me even more is what this means for the future of the Elder Scrolls. If Bethesda are willing to destroy one of their greatest stories all for a mere 400 credits, which by the way amount to around £4 or $4, then what will they be willing to do to the Elder Scrolls 6? If we look over another one of Bethesda's game series, to Fallout, particularly Fallout 4, and how it's handled its own Creation Club mods, then I think we can see what the future of the Elder Scrolls 6 will look like. We have the entire visual cohesion of the Fallout series, as well as lore and world building in tatters thanks to the Creation Club. You can find the Doom Marines armor as well as the BFG from the Doom games, or the spacesuit from the 2017 Prey game. The Quake Thunderbolt weapon from the old Quake games is even in here now. It's even possible to find the helmet and sword wielded by the last Dragonborn in the iconic Skyrim reveal trailer in Fallout 4 now. Fallout 4 has become a mess of Bethesda IPs all lazily mashed together with no thought, love or care for how this affects the world building, lore and stories of the Fallout world and universe. Similar to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim's Anniversary Edition, all of this cheap, lazy, lore destroying bullshit is now just a standard part of Fallout 4 thanks to the recently released Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition, making it pretty much canon now, since if you buy the game today, this bullshit content will be included whether you want it or not. I ask you, where does this end? Will we be seeing content from other Microsoft IPs shoved into these games next? Are we going to be able to run around the Elder Scrolls 6 dressed up as the Master Chief, cutting bandits in half with the chainsaw gun from Gears of War? Will we be seeing Creation Club Game Passes forced into the Elder Scrolls 6? All so that the greedy Bethesda can make just a little bit of extra profit from a game that will already undoubtedly be profitable for them. I'm scared that it will. While Umbra being crammed into Skyrim is ultimately a small thing on its own, I'm scared that this is a sign of things to come, a small glimpse of the future with the Elder Scrolls 6. If Bethesda are willing to destroy the legacy of Umbra all for £4, then I'm scared what they're going to do with the future of the Elder Scrolls. Maybe it'd be better if we never got a new Elder Scrolls game. And I hate that I'm saying that, but that's how I feel when I look at Umbra in Skyrim. Look, hopefully I'm wrong, but somehow I don't think that I will be.